What happens in a high-control evangelical church ran by a dictator pastor when a young, energetic, friendly, personable pastor who has attended seminary shows up and starts connecting with people and teaching them scripture and encouraging them to become leaders in whatever it is that God has called them to do? Oh, so very much happens.
Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
It's a place there shouldn't be abuse. Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims Jesus.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through spiritual abuse and escaping from toxic church culture while finding hope in Christ.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
Welcome back, listeners. We have a... What did you say, Melissa? Do we have a
rabbit trail for you?
We are going to talk about the shift in leadership that happens in 2015 at Come As You Are. But we really want to take just a second and highlight some things that kind of led us to this point. We are going to deep dive down that rabbit trail over on our Patreon. So head over there and you will get our full investigative hyperfixations over there of everything that we have uncovered.
But, with visual materials.
Yes, with visual aids. We come with receipts. But just to kind of give you this idea of, we really have created this idea of there's the American dream that is God's way. And Tom at Come As You Are loves to put down the American dream. He loves to talk about how it needs to be all about Jesus and you should be living God's dream for your life and not the American dream. And he loves to tell the story of how he had horses and boats and all of these great, wonderful things. And he was playing softball in his work softball team and all of this stuff. But he was chasing the American dream, and ultimately he ended up almost losing everything. And it is a very... I feel it is a very putting down people who have those things and less focusing on the fact that, like, Tom was a little bit of an a-hole. And that's probably why it led more to him losing everything.
Wasn't the boat, Tom.
Yeah, it wasn't the boat. It wasn't the horses. It was probably just you and your personality as a human. But we have this American dream God's way. But really, honestly, all of that comes from this dogma that is created decades before by other men who want to change what Scripture says in order to fit a narrative.
I think that's what the interesting point is that you have men who stand up and they say, I was doing, XYZ, chasing the world, and then I gave it all up to chase what Jesus had for me. But when you really stop and take a look at it, all of the stuff that you have while chasing Jesus is the exact same stuff you were chasing after in the world. And then the people who are saying the quiet stuff out loud, like the prosperity gospel, those people that say they gave up chasing the world are the ones putting down the people who are just blatantly saying there's a prosperity gospel. Boggles my mind.
Well, and this idea that the evangelical church, I feel like we have, especially in like Come As You Are, we're very quick to put down people like Joel Osteen and his prosperity gospel, because it's easy to throw out these Christian, phrases like God's not your genie and all of those things. But in reality, the evangelical church has this prosperity gospel built into it. And Tom would never stand on stage and be like, if you just tithe your 10%, God will give you everything that you want. Like, and he's not like some of those pastors like, well, we have to have a jet so we can go and help all these people.
Yeah, but he was saying it in between the lines.
Exactly. You had to read between the lines, right? Like Tom loved to talk about the fact that he would buy used cars. He never would buy new. He always found like these cheap little cars to drive around and things like that. But also you built a giant house on the ridge with a pool and a hot tub.
Your wife a sports car.
So
he would drive.
Yeah, and your wife drives.
Like, be real, but he would say that message anyway. Like, I tithe and I got out of financial trouble. It's the same thing. So you'd be saying the same thing and then saying, but don't follow the prosperity gospel. But everything I have is because I follow Jesus. It's just the same message.
Right.
Exactly. And we kind of went down this rabbit trail and we realized you can trace it all back. And what it all comes down to is power. It comes down to who has the power. And in America, he who has the money has the power. And that is definitely, if you look into these evangelical organizations, you can trace it back. He who has the money has the power. And we've talked about, certain people at Come As You Are that really could do whatever the hell they wanted to. And it came down to, well, because they're big tithers, and people who didn't have the money to tithe the big amounts, you were expected to serve to the death because you can't contribute financially. You have to contribute some way. So you need to contribute with manpower. But we're really going to look at the shift in leadership, because up to this point, we have Tom, and Tom is the end all be all. What Tom says goes. We do not have a board of directors. We do not have elders. We have a leadership team. Tom calls it his leadership team, but there's no like, if you're going to be on this team, these are your expectations and this is what it's going to look like. Tom invites whoever he wants to. And we have Pastor O'Reliable, but Pastor O'Reliable, as much as he's steady and he's there and he's the person that, he says he's going to do something, he shows up and all of these things. This is really where we start to see the crack in that. And, this is something that I've questioned, is because I had a very romanticized idea, I guess, of Pastor O'Reliable at my time there, because I never experienced a different side of him that other people experienced. And so I had this romanticized idea about him. And what it came down to was I started questioning, well, why did Tom allow him to be a pastor? Why was that allowed? Because there was plenty of other men who threw their hat in that ring and said that they were called to do those things. And to my recollection, Pastor O'Reliable never threw his hat in that ring. Other people threw his hat for him. They approached Tom and said, we view him as someone who is living this life. There was one other person who had been viewed like that, and we're going to discuss him in upcoming episodes. But O'Reliable never went to Tom and was like, I feel a calling on my life to be a pastor. We have reached the point in our timeline in 2015 where that is going to start happening, and it's going to start happening frequently and by multiple men at one time. And so really looking at that phenomenon, why is that happening? Why all of a sudden do so many men feel like they are called to be pastors when up to this point we've had one pastor and then we've licensed Old Reliable, and he, in order to bring on Pastor Younggun, we had just ordained him. It took a while to get him ordained, but why was that allowed? And what it came down to was O'Reliable is a yes man. O'Reliable tells Tom yes to everything. And O'Reliable has a very, like, if you think of like just a sweet old man grandpa, that's kind of the vibe that Old Reliable gives off. And so that is kind of the opposite vibe that Tom gives off. So they balanced each other very well in that regard. And I think Tom did that on purpose. I don't know. What are you ladies' thoughts on that?
He definitely did.
So why, see, that's what came up, I think, in this part of the timeline. When you get to this place where what shifted within Come As You Are, that now you have men stepping up and saying, I'm called to be a pastor. Why was that never a thing before? Was it a thing before? Like, we've talked about like ads and trying to hire outside pastors, and they were there for like a week and left, and then maybe a couple months and then left. So, but there was never any traction, until you get to Pastor Old Reliable. And then, like you said, Amanda, to the best of your knowledge, he didn't step up and say, hey, I want to be a pastor. Like, other people said, this guy is going to be a pastor. What made him a candidate that was long lasting? What gave him traction? What brought him in? And I think that's the contrast that we're going to start diving into, because Come As You Are is about to go through a really big shift, and it's just very interesting.
Well, I can tell you.
I figured you would. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to say, well, let's let Brandy, because she's like, oh, I got you.
So, we are a purpose-driven church. The purpose-driven church is a Protestant church. Tom comes from Southern Baptist. Evangelical, Southern Baptist, Protestants all basically believe the same thing. Rick Warren figures out how to MLM this. So, 2011, if you want to grow your church, you have to have people in leadership positions, because you have to fill the seats. At the beginning, it wasn't satellite, but that's what purpose-driven becomes. But it was basically just build your congregation as big as you can. So everybody has a narrative that they need to play. And I believe that in this leadership that you're taught, you're going to need somebody to balance Tom's authority. So when your congregation is 300 people, you have someone that can, diffuse situations.
But you see that?
That's why he picked Old Reliable.
You see that in like the mega church model. Like, if you think about Mark Driscoll, you have this one spotlighted man. He's loud, he's abrupt, he's aggressive, He's grunge, punk Seattle style. And he has male leaders around him, but none of them are the point man. They're all yes men. They all reflect the go see this guy, gentle, caring, yes man. And I mean, and
He'll put
you
out
see
the
that,
fires.
but you see that in all of these organizations. You have even Rick Warren. You have Rick Warren. I don't see Rick Warren sharing the spotlight with his second in command. No, his second in command is a yes man.
Well, and Rick Warren's persona becomes laid back Californian. So on stage, he's laid back, agreeable. You don't grow a church that size that fast being agreeable. So he has someone else that he's sending people to, dealing with the conflicts and everything.
Yeah, well, because it's celebrity pastor. It's not celebrity pastors.
Right.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point. Like, because even like Brian Houston, who founded Hillsong in Australia, like here in America, Carl Lentz was the face of Hillsong, and Brian Houston had even come out and said like there were things about Carl Lentz he didn't like, because Carl Lentz would get emotional on stage, and he would he'd tear up when he would talk about things and things like that. And, Brian Houston's like, a man shouldn't cry, and, all those things. But it's that balance. It's that you have to have someone who has a softer persona in order to balance things out.
Right. And then after that, you have to bring in the young families. The church cannot grow without the young families. So if you are following this exponential growth system that Rick Warren's purpose-driven church is based on, you have to have other pastors. So that's why at this time, you start seeing all these men come in, because Tom's looking actively, even though we don't know this. But it's not to replace him like we were once told. It's to grow the church.
Yeah. So during this time, we have had a few people. We have the wannabe pastor who isn't a pastor. He's just a youth leader, but he starts calling himself pastor, which... This made Tom so mad when he found out, and I find it absolutely hilarious, because essentially that's what Tom did. Tom just started calling himself a pastor and at the Baptist church, and it was like, well, people started calling me pastor. Well, no, I'm fairly positive you started calling yourself a pastor. So then people were like, oh, you're Pastor Tom.
And that's what I think happened with Old Reliable. I don't think a ton of people went to him and said, I see this. Nothing against Old Reliable. I think seeds were planted.
Well, and I mean, let's be honest. Tom, as we will discover more and more as we go through our timeline, one person says something to Tom, so then Tom will say, well, all these people came to me. The whole church says this, when in reality it was like one person. So who knows how many people actually went to Tom about
and it's usually
Reliable.
Only one person.
Yeah, so one person probably brought up the fact that Old Reliable had pastoring qualities, and Tom ran with it, that the whole church was coming to him and everyone was begging. It's really hard to know what is truth and what is made up in the world of Tom, in order to have the proper propaganda for him to, live out his godly American dream of being a pastor in a church. But we have a situation where a family comes in. They are a very fundamental family. They homeschool. They don't eat sugar. I was a youth leader at the time when they first originally came in, and they threw a fit because we were watching secular movies on movie night with the kids. And instead of watching like Veggie Tales and like Bible Man. I don't know what they expected.
But let's be real, you're watching like G movies. I don't even know if you would watch PG.
We watched the one that they absolutely flipped their lids on was we watched Zookeeper because it's a funny movie. It's Zookeeper. And they lost their minds that I was essentially they accused me of trying to teach their children about sex by watching the movie Zookeeper.
If they only knew what you were letting my kids watch.
To which I was like, seriously, they're teenage boys. I'm pretty sure they know what sex is. Like, they have an inkling, but whatever. So this family comes in, and they are not, I step down, we go through the whole shift and stuff. The young couple, who was going to take over youth, they are replaced quickly by Pastor Wannabe, and this family is not a fan of Wannabe whatsoever. People are saying things. Kids stop attending youth. Melissa, I think your daughter stops attending youth. During this time.
Yeah, we had big issues.
Very sexist, very authoritarian.
Yeah. So it was like my daughter that refused to go to youth group at Come As You Are and started going to a different church at that time, and because of the male authority that was in place was not okay.
Which, in all honesty, I half wonder if him and Tom would have conversations behind closed doors, because the things that this guy would say out loud and demonstrate in public are Tom's
right.
true
So
feelings.
no, I think he was trying to, because he was trying to impress Tom. So he was doing the same thing that I was doing with the worship team. He had his little checklist, and he was just trying to. He understood the assignment. The problem is he understood the assignment a little too well, and he didn't learn that he missed the keep the quiet stuff.
He missed the fine print. Yeah. He missed the fine print that said, we really feel this way, but you can't say it from stage.
Because this is the same guy that would like overtalk you. Like you would share something when you were teaching in youth group, Amanda, and then he would turn around and say it. He'd have to mansplain it because when a woman said it, it wasn't correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was one of those guys that I would be like, so, the Bible says the sky is blue, which right, I'm generalizing, of course, but like the Bible says the sky is blue. And he'd be like, actually it says it is like a light dusted blue, and like, yeah, he'd do crap like that. And so just annoying. So this family is not a fan of him. The dad of this family is really the first guy that has quote unquote been risen up within Come As You Are, which at this point they had been there for like, I don't know, a couple years maybe, if even that. But according to Tom, they were there since the beginning because Tom loves to change people's backstories. And so according to Tom, he rose this man up. This man didn't even know Jesus. And they show up and Tom raises him up and saves the whole family, even though like they had been doing church and were, living the fundamental Christian life for years. But Tom likes to say that he raised this guy up to be a leader. So this man does not like Wannabe. And so there are grumblings about Wannabe. So this guy goes to people and asks them about Wannabe. He goes around, anyone who he has heard that has had a problem with Wannabe, he goes to them to address these problems. My husband was one of them. He approached my husband. My husband said, here's a couple of problems I have with him. Like, he's kind of rude to the kids. He doesn't, listen to them fully. He talks over them. I really don't like the way he treated my wife. There were things that my husband had said. And this dad was like, well, would you be willing to put that into writing? my husband felt uncomfortable with that, but he did it. That is the first instance that my husband had experienced the wrath of Tom, because my husband wrote it down. Now it's not just like hearsay. My husband got called in to a one-on-one meeting with Tom, and then this guy was in there too, and they basically got an hours-long lecture on how you don't question authority and you don't speak ill of leaders and all of this, which I find hilarious because, Melissa, you got the same talking to, but you got it in like large group meeting format. You didn't get
so
one-on-one.
I feel like if you didn't write it down, like there was essentially a coup. And I get the purpose of like writing it down. Like this guy was campaigning, he was like, we're going to handle this appropriately, like write letters, petition. Like, I don't know. I think it was like he had some.
Well, the whole premise of it was that like we need to have record of this. And so this can't just be like a he said, she said situation.
It's actually the correct way to do anything.
Yeah, like we need to have an actual record that you are willing to say this is what this guy is doing.
And so like,
and
it wasn't meant to shame. It was meant to bring it to the pastor and his leaders so they could see what other people's thoughts were without having to have everyone in the room, because we know how well that goes.
Well, and I want to be clear also, people had gone to Wannabe and been like, hey, maybe you should slow your roll. Hey, maybe you should not talk down to women. Like people had approached him about the way he did things, and he blew them off. And so if you're looking at approaching things in the correct biblical manner.
Yeah, I feel like that's important to say. Like this was definitely brought up and handled in the best way to be like in accordance with like Matthew 18 and like you go to your brother and and so this was the next step of bringing it to church leadership. But those who wrote it down had their one-on-one meetings and suffered the wrath of don't question the ultimate authority of the church, Pastor Tom. And so it was very interesting because the rest of us, that family and a few other people who were there, everybody who basically had been groveling about about the wannabe guy, like we all get called in to the church office, and it was an evening meeting, and we all get called in, and it is billed. And the first part of the meeting is we are going to have this out. We need to resolve this in a healthy way. So Pastor Tom was taking responsibility for the situation, and he was billing it as I understand that my congregation is upset about the way the leadership style of this guy is. And so we're going to sit down and we're going to have a healthy conversation about it. And so the first part of that meeting was, okay, let's talk about this. What are the issues? Let's hear them out. And so basically what happened is everybody went around the room and shared, in front of this guy, their issues with him. And I'm going to be honest with you, nobody was being rude or mean, but they're saying, look, bud, like you have to know right now that your leadership style is harmful. And it's not working. It's not working, and for me, I was very vocal about it. I said, I have daughters, and the way that you treat my daughters is not okay, and none of it was to personally attack this guy. However, the meeting did suddenly flip a switch, and everything that we said was being used and weaponized against us by Pastor Tom to humiliate and berate and tear down everybody who stepped up and said they didn't. Like for me personally too. Like, I mean, I was personally attacked by Tom in that meeting because of the things I said. Because I said, hey, bud, Like your disrespect of women, like you're disrespecting my teenage daughter. She doesn't feel comfortable in a room with you. It's not okay. I was berated publicly by Pastor Tom in that meeting. Like I was in tears.
Well, and let's just focus on that point just for a second. This isn't like you get called into the principal's office and the principal is like, I'm very disappointed in you, and I'm going to have to give you a consequence. Like, that's not what this is. This is a person who is an authority over you that we have been trained, and I'm just going to be honest, brainwashed into thinking this person has the ultimate authority over you aside from God, and is essentially functioning as God in the church. He hears from God and then he tells everyone what God says. This man is standing there screaming, red-faced, and using anything that you have brought up that could be a weakness or an insecurity, and he uses those things to tear you down to the core. There is no loving correction in this. There is no like you would assume a parent, like, hey, you did this wrong. I'm very disappointed in you. Like when your kids are little and it's like, I'm going to have to give you a spanking and I don't want to do that. Like that is, there's no love. There's no empathy. There's nothing coming from him but anger and destruction.
Well, yeah. And like, I mean, I've been in like diplomatic, in the workplace, like where you have issues where multiple people get called in and they're like, hey, we have this issue, and we're not going to take sides, but we are going to resolve this issue. And so, there was no resolving the issue. Like it was, everybody came in under the guise of you're going to get a chance to vocalize your issue and we are going to work through this and we are going to come to a resolve. But when everybody got there, they vocalized their opinion, then they were shamed for it. And everybody had to apologize to this guy for the honest things that they thought, but they were shamed by the pastor. Like this, it's ridiculous. And then that guy ended up leaving like within weeks of the whole thing because he knew, because then everybody, it's like, what kind of like seriously, think about this. What kind of manipulation is this that you're going to be like if I was like, hey, Amanda and Brandy, I understand you're having a problem with so-and-so. Let's all sit down and talk about it. I'm going to mediate this situation. We're going to come to a resolve. And then you get there and I go, Amanda, you just told so-and-so that you think they're hideous. Brandy, you just told so-and-so that you think that, and these are legitimate things. Children's feelings are being hurt at church. Like we are hurting the new generation of leadership within our youth group. These are serious accusations. And then I tell you your accusations, you need to feel sorry and be shameful of your accusations. How dare you? How dare you say those things? That is not a resolve. And you think you're resolving the issue? And then you expect everything to go back to normal?
Well, we don't want the issue resolved because we need to be shamed so you do not ever question the authority again.
Yep.
Because it is a hierarchy and it has to be protected at all costs. And this also weeds out the people that cannot handle it. You went back for more.
Win-win. You shamed the people who would ever talk about leadership in any negative sort of light. You weed out the people that can't handle it. And the person who was the problem disrupting the boat left, abandoned ship. So for Pastor Tom, that was win-win. It really did resolve it for him.
And Tom comes off looking like, I will defend my leaders.
Correct. All of these people have been told how terrible this guy is. They've thought about things that he's done that they didn't like. And so they're ready with receipts. and then the bait and switch happens and everyone's sitting there, and then instead of being upset with how this happened from the beginning with not properly training leaders and pastors, you're now mad at the
I
person
went
sitting next to you.
into that meeting confident that this guy was mistreating women and our youth, and I left that meeting so sorry. Sorry. Like, I'm so sorry that I hurt your feelings by bringing up your deficits in leadership. Like, I was wrong. I should have, I'm so, like, I was so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness. I can't believe I ever said anything. You just go on being a douchebag. I felt so sorry.
Yep.
It is so comical to me that we had to apologize to a man for hurting his feelings.
I was bawling my eyes out because I felt so bad for hurting that man's feelings.
And the women are the emotional ones.
Well, and let me tell you what happens after this meeting. So you have prayer on Tuesday. He's torn down by Tom. Wednesday evening, you have this meeting. It is just chaos. Nothing is solved, but people are made to feel terrible and shamed. Thursday night service rolls around. I would be standing at the preschool desk. People would be coming around and telling me, and basically this is where we get the at least and he only. That's how we justify things at Come As You Are, because you would have been thinking about this, and if I wasn't part of that meeting, which usually I wasn't, I would still be coming in hot and saying, well, he did this and he said this. People would come over and be like, well, at least he doesn't do this. If only he did that, it's not that bad. So everything has been rejustified, and he continues to lead the way.
And you felt so wrong.
And you felt because
and you felt like you did something so wrong that it doesn't matter how, like Pastor Tom acted in that meeting, because you were the one who was wrong.
And I guarantee if we went through and we really dug back to the, found the week that this actually happened and pinpointed a date, the next 2 or 3 Thursday night services would all be centered around how you do not speak ill of leadership. And God has placed leaders over.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But I find it interesting because this guy, so the wannabe guy, he leaves, packs up his family, leaves, he's done. I mean, of course, because now you've heard
leaves the
now
state.
You've heard what 90% of the church thinks of you. And it wasn't a honestly, it wasn't a personal thing. Because I would say, for the most part, I like the guy. And I could appreciate.
I didn't like the guy. I thought he was an asshole. His wife, however, I loved her. She was wonderful.
I mean, for the most part, it was just those few things. You're good, but you got to fix this has got to stop. I don't think I associated these few character flaws with his entire personhood.
So this happens. So you would think, because we have this guy who, him and his wife are involved in youth, this fundamental family, right? The dad they're involved in youth. He's involved in other leadership. He's doing men's ministry stuff. You would think that they would be the logical idea to take over youth, or even the young couple. You would think that they would be logical to take over youth. This is before they pass away. But no, we give youth group to the children's ministry leader, who is a woman. So let's talk about that for a minute. Women are allowed to lead certain ministries, but only if Tom allows them to. the thought process behind this is that, well, it's okay for women to lead ministries like the ministry where people have to come in and clean the church, because, like, yeah, women should be cleaning. Women are allowed to lead ministries like children's ministry because, and this is like where Tom wouldn't even like try to sugarcoat or quiet things. Like, he would flat out just say, like, women are more nurturing. And even when we did like baby dedications, like, he made the moms stand there and be like, because you are more nurturing and gentle, like, do you vow to God to nurture your children and teach them to obey God and to obey their father and to serve in the church? Like, that is what he made women vow to God to do during baby dedications. And so the thought was that women should be leading children's ministry because women are naturally more nurturing. Whereas the men, during baby dedications where, do you vow to, raise up your children and
provide and protect?
Yes,
so at this point, had this guy, the camouflage granola family, had this guy, like, he was moving up in the ranks in men's ministry and in he's a man's man and he's strong. Has he voiced his opinion yet that he feels like he's called to be a pastor when all this went on? Like, this was part of his, like, he's the next leader at Come As You Are, which explains why he took it upon himself with the problems in youth to show his leadership skills. Because he is a naturally leading type guy. He's a man's man, very vocal. And I think that that's important to point out that that's what led to, like,
oh yeah, that's where the audacity came from, is he was being told he's a leader.
Because that leads into why it matters that the children's ministry lady was given youth after the wannabe guy left, because you had two totally competent, one young, one older, one newly married, one married with children. Like, you have these ideal candidates, two of them, that could even co-lead youth. And yet, for some reason, Pastor Tom decides that the children's ministry lady is supposed to be the leader of youth.
Yep, because the young couple, this, like we said, this is before they pass away, and we kind of are going backwards in time just because we need to set the stage for you for the shift in leadership that's going to happen when Pastor Younggun really comes in and goes full-fledged pastoring. So this young couple, before they pass away, this guy, he was phenomenal with the kids. I've talked about this in previous episodes, just how much he cared for the kids and how he really did try so hard to connect with them. And Tom never saw that side of him. Tom saw him running around being crazy in the gym, playing dodgeball, all of these things. So this guy, even though he's married, he owns his own house, he's an adult, and by any measure of it, he's a successful adult. He is always and forever looked at as this 14-year-old kid who can't get his crap together. Now you have this older man, so let's look at this fundamental guy. He comes in, he says some stuff that rocks the boat a little too much, and by calling out the wannabe guy, by doing things that he felt like he was allowed to do because Tom is calling him a leader. Tom is saying things like, well, you feel called to be a pastor. This is how pastors are going to behave. He felt like he had the authority to do those things. By him doing that, he actually inadvertently called Tom's authority into question, because, like you guys have said, is when you call wannabe out, you are actually calling Tom out as like, how could you have chosen him to lead youth group? How could you
Right.
allow
Well, he
this to
showed he wasn't a
happen?
yes man.
And so
You know, he wasn't. He was somebody who was going to come in and make change
Exactly.
and take over and do things his way. And Tom can't have that, because Tom has to be the ultimate authority, and any male leader under him has to be a yes man.
And so what do you do to punish men who are not living up to your standards? You put a woman in authority over them. And the woman who is leading children's ministry, she probably felt like, Tom sees me as a leader. I feel so honored. Like all of those things that all three of us have felt at one way or and at one time or another. You feel like he sees it, and I'm doing what God is asking me to do, and I'm living this life, and I'm living the call worthy of all the like all the
Right.
the crap that you tell
we're
yourself.
not talking about an uneducated
And-
woman. We're not talking about a woman who doesn't have her stuff together, who isn't a professional and career woman, who isn't operating as a leader outside of the church. Like, we're talking about a woman who can hold her own and who is successful and who is a leader, and probably more so than a lot of men out in the real world.
Exactly. And so she probably felt like, yes, he sees me, and had a form of validation, but in all reality, Tom used her to punish the men.
Because of course she does. Because as a woman who is career minded and has an education and is very successful, when you join in and you sign up for the Christian woman mindset, you're signing up to give up all of your aspirations. It doesn't matter what you've done. You are still only worthy if you are a wife and a mom. And so how do you balance that? Well, you can be successful and use your education and your leadership skills and all of that career-based knowledge that you have, as long as you use it in the church. So of course it's a golden ticket for her.
Right. And she gave up her career to have kids. She finds in the church, like most of us did, you can use your skills, and she's a natural leader. Most women are natural leaders, and in this church, I rarely see any man lead anything at all. It's all led by the women. Everything happens because of the women.
Yep.
And so that is why she will do what she does, and why we all do what we do down the line. Because there is no real male leaders in this church that are doing the work to get the crap done.
Exactly.
There are male leaders with titles doing the bare minimum, because that is all this organization as a whole in the United States requires.
Because it's nothing new. Like, how many posters or memes or vines or whatever these kids are talking about these days is like, it's not even, it's not,
oh my God.
It's not even these kids today. It's us. What was it back in the day? Behind every great man, it's really a woman doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Propaganda.
Brandy, you brought up something really important, because the men aren't really doing a whole lot. Like, yes, you have men who are jumping in, and like there are men who are participating in things, but like on the whole, like there's no man out there that's, leading the way. And so that is why this shift in leadership happened so abruptly, because
it has to get back in control.
The young couple passes away, and the young guy, he's like, okay, this lady's gonna lead youth. That's great. He called her, hey boss, what do you need me to do? Like, but I think a lot of that also is a testament to how he was raised. He was raised by a very strong mother.
Well, here's what happens is Tom is not prepared for Generation X women and the old millennial women to start serving in these roles, because we do everything and we don't really ask permission.
No, because in reality, like, everybody knows that Gen X started FAFO, but what they don't understand is it was Gen X women that started that, not Gen X men. But behind the scenes,
and that's the thing is, you will have these big events, and it's very hard to get the point across that I'm not trying to say all the men in the church sat around, did nothing, said, "Where's my dinner?"
But when we're setting up for the events, it's all women and one dude.
Right. And if our husbands are there helping with something, we've had to badger them into doing it. We have to make promises to them. Because it has been set up this way, and it also works in this church, especially because most of the women are stay-at-home moms that are serving. So we should be able to do all of this, because what else are we going to do? Sit around and gossip? Idle hands.
Right. And that young couple behind the scenes are having conversations as a husband and a wife with other people that they consider mentors. And I was in on a lot of these conversations. Why? The question was, what is it that Pastor Tom needs to allow them to take over youth? Like, why does he never see him as a youth leader? Why is he? And I mean, these were like in-depth conversations, and the end result of all the conversations that I participated in with how this young couple couldn't figure out why the young man could never be in charge of youth. Nobody had an answer. Like the question always ended in an answer of, I don't know. I don't know. Like, nobody knows, because they would. Yeah. And I mean, I'm talking about, like, we would dissect the things that Pastor Tom said, the reasons that he gave. We were dissecting that and trying to figure out, based on our knowledge, trying to figure out how that could even be accurate. And everybody always got to the end result of, like, we're like, I don't know. I don't understand. Nobody understood. But, it really was because in Pastor Tom's mind, this young man was not an adult who owned his own house and had a very successful job. This was a young man who was 14 years old, and like every 14-year-old was being a 14-year-old.
Exactly. But he took it, and he was like, okay, if she's the lead, she can be the lead. That's fine. The fundamental family, that guy couldn't hang. He was not happy with that, so they ended up leaving also. And there was other things that led to them
because
leaving.
Ultimately, because he saw the writing on the wall. You're never going to be a pastor here under the authority of Pastor Tom.
Yeah. Exactly. So that is why this shift happened so quickly and abruptly, because Pastor Young Gun comes in, and he is essentially the poster child for what has been touted as a Christian man. We set up for VBS. We do all of these things. We're doing events. We have our kids there moving chairs and moving tents and all of this kind of stuff. We are the women are the workforce, and then we drag our kids around in the name of, I'm teaching them how to serve the Lord, and all of the crap that we would spew to each other. And all it was slave labor. And Pastor Young Gun shows up. Pastor Young Gun comes and helps us decorate for VBS in 2015. Pastor Young Gun is one of the first ones to sign up to, I mean, we had men help with VBS before, but it was like, I'm going to tell you what Bible stories we have to tell, or I will take off work and I will come and lead a group, and I expect to be, honored from stage with a trophy that I took off work to be able to be here, and all of this stuff. And it was like, oh, thank you so much. You men, you took up, Tom would say, you took off a week's worth of work, and, that's what that they needed that money to provide for their families and blah, blah, blah. But no one cares about the women. There were women who took off of work. to come and serve at VBS. There's women who I didn't do laundry for a whole week of VBS, and I got so behind on my housework because I was at VBS, and none of those sacrifices are ever taken into account. But Young Gun shows up. Young Gun's helping us move tables. Young Gun's climbing ladders. Young Gun is whatever you need me to do. I'm not going to sign up for what I want to do. You tell me what you need done the most. Because he comes in, we are like, you want to be a pastor, okay? So let's have you work for that. And through that whole summer and everything, through VBS and all of that kind of stuff, he is serving. And so we reach a point where we license him. And he is functioning as a pastor. Tom gives him Thursday night service. This is your night to preach. And people are drawn to him. Why? And they're drawn to him in a way that Tom never had people drawn to him. And so why is that?
Well, and remember, like, Young Gun checks a lot of boxes. He grew up in the church. He was a young...
Which that story even is like, the way Tom told it in 2015 was like, his mom was the lead of children's, and, like, that's what, if you weren't there, that's what you thought. And in all reality, like, his family would show up every so often. Like, he attended youth group regularly, and he was very close to the youth leader, and he would come on Sundays by himself. His family didn't attend the whole church. It wasn't like our families are there all the time.
But he checked that box because we're going to raise a leader up from within. So he was one of us. He could be raised up. But he went off. He went to seminary. He became a pastor. Like, he's a real legit, been to seminary pastor. So he's checking all these boxes, but he's also from within. So, that's like win-win on Tom's agenda. Yeah. And I feel like the understanding from my perspective, because like during this time, like, were there issues in my marriage? Yeah, but they were like far between. So this was really like a good time. But like when Pastor Young Gun shows up, like he is legitimately like, I went to seminary. I want to be a pastor. This is my calling on my life. And he shows up and acts and is doing and being a real pastor. And so not only is he showing up like at these events, like you said, like VBS, but he's relational. So he's talking to people, he's talking to women, he's talking to men, he's talking to the youth kids. Like, he is invested in coming in and saying, okay, where are we? What do you guys have going on? This is how are we serving the Lord? What you got? He's always investing in the people relationally. And so like for Froggy, like he's coming alongside Froggy and he's like, hey man, like what you got going on? Like, how are you stepping up as a man? What's the Lord been speaking to you this week? Like, how's it going? And I only bring that up because I think it's interesting that like, I feel like for a lot of men, they really felt like they had a chance. Like, I feel like a lot of men sat back in the curtains because their only option of being a pastor at the church was to be Pastor Tom. There was no leadership board or option to be a man in leadership. Like, you could only go so high. And so I think men didn't do anything because they knew that there was a ceiling cap on, if they weren't going to be Pastor Tom, they couldn't be anything. But Young Gun comes in and he gives them like, no, there's so many things you can do as a man. And I only say that because I think for most men, they felt like, I can be a leader of my Bible study. I can be a leader at my home. I could be a leader of, like, they really felt motivated. But for Froggy, it wasn't I think I could come in and be a leader. I think he said, it's my time to come in and be a leader because I'm going to be this kid's boss one day. And that's a totally different mindset.
And right. And see, for Jason, Tom does not tell people or give any kind of real things to do to be a leader in your household, to be a leader in the church. Jason never cares about being a leader in the church, but Jason does want to be a good husband and father. We always want to correct our mistakes and mistakes we grew up with, whatever. Tom just says, pick up your cross. Pick up your cross, do Master Life. Well, Jason is never, ever doing Master Life. He doesn't know where the cross is. And he has Justin, but I feel like they're in the same boat, because when you're in the depths of raising kids, going to work, things have happened, and now your wives are in this crazy cult serving 50 hours a week, and we are more leaders, just personality wise, like they don't know what to do. And that creates a ton of conflict in the marriages that don't get resolved. But when Young Gun comes in, he starts addressing those things, which is funny because he's single and he's a lot younger.
Well, and I was going to say something similar, is like he's actually giving the men tangible things. He's going and being like, your wife's mad at you, whereas Tom would be like, yep, wives are bitchy sometimes. Must be her time of the month. Just wait it out. It'll be fine. You be the leader,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Young Gun would be like, okay, well, when was the last time you helped her do dishes? Like, you watch the kids and let her go take a bath. Like, take her out to dinner. He came over and he babysat our kids so we could go out to dinner. Like,
well, and he would ask questions on both sides.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't automatically take the man's side, but also he didn't automatically defend the poor, helpless women either. Like, he really cared about people to a point. And I think this is why this shift happened so drastically. And this is where we, Justin grew tremendously. And I don't think it was because he didn't know what to do before that. Like, I felt like he did, but like, I feel like under Young Gun, Justin was finally given permission to
seek out opportunities. He was given opportunity. There was no opportunity under Tom. It was either be Tom or be nothing.
Yes.
With Pastor Young Gun, it was be you. Be all that you can be. Join the army.
And Justin wasn't a man in Tom's eyes.
Yeah, Justin and I are forever, like, we are looked at as his kids, and so but there was also, like, under Tom, it was, you want to lead a Bible study? Well, just do Master Life. Why do you need to do something different? Just do Master Life. And Justin was like, I've done Master Life 17 times. Like, I don't want to do Master Life anymore.
And Justin's peers are, oil field workers and construction. Like, they're not going to come in. They're not doing homework.
No.
Like, it's just not the vibe. And Justin knows this. So it's good that he does not push this on people. And, because that would have been a disaster in itself.
Okay.
So
I have two things. Number one, Tom's answer was do Master Life, right? And people are like, I want to do other stuff, right? But Tom's answer is like, well, just do Master Life. Did you ever feel like, because to me, like when you said that, I was like, that's so illogical. And like, it's such a closed system where there's like a certain number of things you can only do. Like, you can only do Master Life. You can only do this. It's the Bible and Master Life and Jesus, and that's it. Anything else? Why do you need to do that stuff? Why do you need answers from other places, right? So like, you're talking about Justin being like, I want to do these other Bible studies, and people are frustrated because they're like, I need more. But then you're made to feel like you must not have done Master Life right, or you failed Master Life, because why would you need to do more? It's the end all be all. It's the answer. Why do you need something else? It's never, hey, I know. It's never, hey, there might be other opinions that will help inspire you and speak in a way that you'll get it. Like, you should read more. You should have more understanding. That's never the answer. The answer is you must have done it wrong.
Because, so this will happen. I'll go over this on Patreon because it's a dissertation. But this is all based on Rick Warren. Tom is just like Jason and other men. He doesn't really want to read a whole bunch of different Bible studies. The Bible studies have to be vetted. He's not going to do that. So that's why we continue to use Master Life over and over and over, because he did it in 1993, 1996, 1997. And then once we're in the building, it's twice a year sometimes doing Master Life. He knows it inside and out. He doesn't have to prepare for it. Other people can be in these groups leading it. And if he hears something's off, he knows how to correct it because he knows Master Life inside and out. And with us being a purpose-driven church, there are so many things we could have done, but Tom is not going to take the time to do the study himself first. So that's why we have to use Master
Well, which brings
Life
me to the
over and
second
over.
thing.
Well, and Tom,
the second thing I was going to
don't.
say is it is no wonder that Pastor Younggun becomes like this poster child for the perfect Christian man for all of these desperate housewives to be like, he is what you were promised in middle school.
He is the Prince Charming. Every man wants to be him, and every woman wants to be with him. And I don't mean that in a... Honestly, Younggun, when they were in high school, Younggun and my brother-in-law were best friends. Like, Younggun shows up to my family's Christmas. My nephews call him Tio. Like, you know, but... I've always looked at him like he's like a little brother. So I don't mean that in a gross way, but I mean that like women wanted, they were like, yes, I see my husband could be that.
Men wanted to be
my
him.
Husband
Women
could be
wanted
the
their
man
husbands to be him because he is what you were promised in middle school.
Right, exactly. And that's, I was saying, I am one of the few women that don't want this, but I am an anomaly in this situation. And that's why I will have conflict because I don't want Prince Charming, and the rest of women's ministry does want that. There's a few women like kind of on the fence, whatever, but they want peace, harmony. They want it's the freaking coffee cup. It's the coffee cup. Bring me coffee and tell me I'm pretty.
Yeah. Which I feel like a lot of women, because like I don't necessarily want Justin to dote on me, but I also would be like, I want you to at least be like, oh, you cooked dinner? Maybe I should, help you clean up dinner. Like that's ultimately that's all I wanted at that point in time.
With your own
I wanted
thinking.
a true
partner.
partner.
I don't want to have to think for you. I want you to think on your own and notice. Like, I don't want you to have like dirty blindness or whatever. Like, I don't want you to be like, well, what do you want me to do? And then I have to look around and I have to mentally take note of all the things that need to be put away. And then I have to tell you to do it. I want you on your own volition to look around, see something out of place and put it away.
And I feel like that's why Younggun really thrived, is because he was teaching men essentially how to be a partner, how to look at things from your wife's perspective and be like, hey, maybe she's a little tired. Maybe you should help her out. And
right. I think women were starting
really
to
took
their
off.
husbands. Go talk to Younggun. Go talk to Younggun. Like he was really naturally, because of who he is, moving up the ranks, so to speak.
Well, here's the difference. Younggun is a Prince Charming, and it is not fake. It is not an ick. He's legitimately cares.
Yes.
I do not want Jason to be like that because Jason becomes an ick because that is not who Jason is.
Exactly.
Here's the other thing. From stage, Tom preaches your marriage is a transaction.
Well, and Charlotte would tote it to the women too.
Right. So wives, you're the only one that can meet your husband's needs. Husbands, you're a provider. Younggun comes in, and when he starts realizing that there's an age group in this church that are struggling with marital issues, he is shocked that a lot of what he's hearing from the wives is, my husband only does the dishes for a transaction. He only asked me how my day was for a transaction. Younggun realizes this And he doesn't condemn the men for it. He makes them see it for themselves, and that's why it works. He doesn't shame the men, because I do not believe that the men all sat down and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. It's not, it's just ingrained. And most of these guys are Generation X or old millennials, and this is how their dads and grandpas operated, so they don't know any different. And then your pastor is saying, this is how my marriage works, and it's amazing. I wait until Charlotte is super ticked off at me, and then I say, office ladies, I won't be in today. I'm taking her on a motorcycle ride to see the leaves change, and it's all fixed. But it's never done because he wants to. It's because he has to. He has to make that transaction.
Yep.
And that's the difference, because Young Gun is not manipulating people. He is genuine. And when somebody like that comes into an organization that is basically operating like Mary Kay selling Jesus, people are drawn to it because you no longer feel like you are on a tier for someone to get to the next level. He actually cares about you as a person. And no one had felt that for a very long time. And maybe that was like that years before, and we just had lost that. I don't know, because I wasn't there.
No, it was never there.
It was always Mary Kay.
Well, and I think a lot of it too is, Young Gun is raised by a mom. His parents divorced very early on. His mom had been married a couple times, and so he sees how men treat his mom, and he sees how hard his mom has to work for stuff, and so he has that empathy for women of like, I think he grew up feeling like if I ever got married one day, I would be the kind of man that would help out. I wouldn't put it all on my wife because I watched how hard my mom had to struggle. And right. So, he's doing those things. But then on the flip side, for us women, he's coming to us and he's having actual intellectual conversations with us on a level that Tom never would. Tom would always talk to me about scripture on a very elementary level, very children's ministry level. And I don't know if I highly doubt he got deeper with men, but again, I don't know. I personally don't think Tom has it in him to have a deep philosophical conversation.
His excuse was always, we are a seeker-friendly church. So his sermons on Sunday only had to go so deep. Like there's like a band of shallow that every sermon is. It never goes deep into scripture, ever, because we're seeker, like, and you wrote it off. Oh, we're seeker friendly. We can't have these deep conversations because somebody might come in and not understand it. We don't want to turn them away, which to me, I came from like a verse by verse Bible teaching church right before I moved to Colorado. And it was deep and in depth and I loved it. And WQR was not that at all until Pastor Young Gun.
Because he missed his demographic. So he is following a playbook. And the playbook works when Come As You Are starts until about 2 years into the building. The problem is 2 years into the building, the population booms. So you no longer have this core group of people that are Tom's peers that are unchurched. When these new neighborhoods are built, Tom assumes everybody is unchurched. And what happens is most people that come in are not unchurched during this time. And most of the people that want to serve are not unchurched. And most of these people are women. And so they know their Bibles. They know what it means to serve. They know everything. They don't need a special 101 with Pastor Tom. They already know it. they're willing to go through the steps to get to be able to serve. And Young Gun recognizes this, and he has conversations with these women of what, instead of making them fill out a questionnaire to guess your spiritual gift, he actually gets to know you, so you figure out your spiritual gift. He's not telling you, because I was told
Well, I
what
think
my spiritual gift was.
Me too, and it turns out it wasn't even a gift.
I don't think I even
unfortunately did not have to have that meeting with Pastor Tom. Yay. So he did not tell me my spiritual gift, therefore I did not have one. But it's true. Because
and
my boxes were never checked anyway, so I never did any of it. But I think it's interesting, just this shift in leadership, like to really understand that Pastor Tom had been doing Thursday night service to like 10 people for years, right? And then Pastor Young Gun comes in and takes over Thursday night service, and this man taught the book of Leviticus to like 3 times the amount of people as Pastor Tom ever put in seats on a Thursday night. Which reminds me that we had
and that's
right. No,
Leviticus.
I just want to point out that the man did a deep dive into Leviticus and filled 3 times the amount of seats. We also had an archaeologist at one point come into the church later on, and he filled Thursday night service where Pastor Tom could get the workers and maybe 3 people. So, I mean, just to talk about that, the level of the perspective of the shift in leadership, when we're saying it was different, and it was drawing people.
Well, and I got in trouble because at one point someone asked me the difference between Sunday morning and Thursday night, and they had called into the office, and I answered the phone, and I'm explaining it, and Tom is overhearing it. And when I hung up the phone, I got my butt reamed because I said, well, Sunday morning is very topical. So Pastor Tom will, he does a sermon series on a topic, and then he goes through like different aspects of that topic. And so a lot of it is like life application, like, how to live the life you want, or how to, all the things that, Tom would.
But the way you explained it, I always thought was really well.
And then I said, but Thursday nights is more scripture based. Pastor Young Gun will take a book of the Bible and he will go verse by verse, chapter by chapter, and teach through that book of the Bible. And the person's like, okay, great. Yeah, wonderful. So I hung up the phone from that conversation. Tom was livid. Why? Because according to him, I told that person he does not teach from the Bible. And I said, that's not what I said. And he's like, no, you told them I teach on topics and Young Gun teaches on the Bible. And I was like,
okay,
well, yeah,
but that's how whatever. I described it to people too, is
ego.
I would say like there was like this band that Pastor Tom would teach in, like this 6-inch level down that Pastor Tom could teach in. And then if you wanted to go deeper than that, you needed to come on Thursday nights for Pastor Young Gun.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's because we are a seeker church, which is the basis for purpose-driven churches, because it's really not about the purpose. It's about exponential growth. So you have a model that you preach from to grow your church. So Tom doesn't know anything else, and he's not going to deviate from that, because he is using, at this time, we are the mega church.
Yeah, it's working.
We are the mega church of Johnstown. So he has made huge growth. There's a ton of families, ton of kids. So he is on his way to being Rick Warren.
We have all of that, and we have this growth. So now all of a sudden we have more men, because they are being encouraged, because they are being called into more of we're going to tell you you're the leader of your home. Well, then you actually have to get off your ass and do something then. Like,
right. Because, sorry to interrupt, but these men had all been there, but we were only seeing them on Sunday mornings, either in the parking lot or in the church lobby. They were not sitting in service. They were not really serving or attending anything except for the big summer event in the park. Because that's why Jason really likes the church at the beginning, because I can go in, serve in children's, the kids are taken care of. If they don't listen, some grandma's going to get them. And he can stand outside and hang out with his people smoking cigarettes. And it's acceptable. It's fine. And Young Gun talks to these guys and not in a way of like, what are you doing? But more of a, why aren't you participating question.
exactly. Like you have to be doing something. Like you want to be a leader, like be a leader. And so we have more men stepping up and saying, hey, I feel called to be a leader. And not necessarily men are saying, I feel called to be a pastor, but like, hey, I want to lead a Bible study. Hey, I want to start serving in this ministry. And we have more men than ever jumping in. And
I don't even feel like the word leader is really used by the men at this time. Like maybe some, but they just...
That's a Tom word.
The men feel like there's a spot for them. Like Melissa said, there was no spot for anybody. And if your wife is serving, your only choice is to serve with her in children's... If you can't play an instrument, you can serve with your wife in children's ministry. But it's almost emasculating to do that because Tom doesn't see any value in that. And only people that are older, and Tom will basically guilt them into children's ministry, serve, but they have a respect level. But if you look at it during this time, any man that is serving in children's ministry and even youth doesn't have a whole lot of respect from Pastor Tom.
Exactly.
But Young Gun changes that.
So one may ask, does this rock the boat a bit?
What? Did this have an effect?
And the answer is abso-frickin-lutely it does.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.